At DigitalShelf.ca, you'll find a diverse range of voices, ideas, and programs because we believe that learning from many perspectives is what builds truly well-rounded leaders. Let's begin. I'll see you inside the lesson. Happy learning.
Vision. But today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. From the Sanskrit, the law of success. Lesson 14, failure. You can do it if you believe you can. Under ordinary circumstances, the term failure is a negative term. In this lesson, the word will be given a new meaning because the word ba has been a very much misused one, and for that reason, it has brought unnecessary grief and hardship to millions of people. In the outset, let us distinguish between failure and temporary defeat. Let us see if that which is so often looked upon as failure is not, in reality, but temporary defeat. Moreover, let us see if this temporary defeat is not usually a blessing in disguise, for the reason that it brings us up with a jerk and redirects our energies along different and more desirable lines. In Lesson 9 of this course, we learned that strength grows out of resistance, and we shall learn, in this lesson, that sound character is usually the handiwork of reverses and setbacks and temporary defeat, which the uninformed part of the world calls failure. Neither temporary defeat nor adversity amounts to failure in the mind of the person who looks upon it as a teacher that will teach some needed lesson. As a matter of fact, there is a great and lasting lesson in every reverse and in every defeat, and usually it is a lesson that could he learned in no other way than through defeat. Defeat often talks to us in a dumb language that we do not understand. If this were not true, we would not make the same mistakes over and over again without profiting by the lessons that they might teach us. If it were not true, we would observe more closely the mistakes which other people make and profit by them. The main object of this lesson is to help the student understand and profit by this dumb language in which defeat talks to us. Perhaps I can best help you to interpret the meaning of defeat by taking you back over some of my own experiences covering a period of approximately 30 years. Within this period, I have come to the turning point, which the uninformed call failure, 7 different times. At each of these 7 turning points, I thought I had made a dismal failure. But now I know that what looked to be a failure was nothing more than a kindly, unseen hand that halted me in my chosen course and with great wisdom forced me to redirect my efforts along more advantageous pathways. I arrived at this decision, however, only after I had taken a retrospective view of my experiences and had analyzed them in the light of many years of sober and meditative thought. First turning point. After finishing a course in a business college, I secured a position as stenographer and bookkeeper, which I held for the ensuing 5 years. As a result of having practiced the habit of performing more work and better work than that for which I was paid, as described in Lesson 9 of this course, I advanced rapidly until I was assuming responsibilities and receiving a salary far out of proportion to my age. I saved my money, and my bank account amounted to several $1,000s. My reputation spread rapidly, and I found competitive bidders for my services. To meet these offers from competitors, my employer advanced me to the position of general manager of the mines where I was employed. I was quickly getting on top of the world, and I knew it. But that was the sad part of my fate. Knew it. Then the kindly hand of fate reached out and gave me a gentle nudge. My employer lost his fortune, and I lost my position. This was my first real defeat. And even though it came about as a result of causes beyond my control, I should have learned a lesson from it, which, of course, I did, but not until many years later. Second turning point. My next position was that of sales manager for a large lumber manufacturing concern in the South. I knew nothing about lumber and but little about sales management, but I had learned that it was beneficial to render more service than that for which I was paid. And I had also learned that it paid to take the initiative and find out what ought to be done without someone telling me to do it. A good-sized bank account, plus a record of steady advancement in my previous position, gave me all the self-confidence I needed, with some to spare perhaps. My advancement was rapid, my salary having been increased twice during the first year. I did so well in the management of sales that my employer took me into partnership with him. We began to make money, and I began to see myself on top of the world again. To stand on top of the world gives one a wonderful sensation, but it is a very dangerous place to stand, unless one stands very firmly, because the fall is so long and hard if one should stumble. I was succeeding by leaps and bounds. Up to that time, it had never occurred to me that success could be measured in terms other than money and authority. Perhaps this was due to the fact that I had more money than I needed and more authority than I could manage safely at that age. Not only was I succeeding, from my viewpoint, of success, but I knew I was engaged in the one and only business suited to my temperament. Nothing could have induced me to change into another line of endeavor. That is, nothing except that which happened, which forced me to change. The unseen hand of fate allowed me to strut around under the influence of my own vanity until I had commenced to feel my importance. In the light of my more sober years, I now wonder if the unseen hand does not purposely permit us foolish human beings to parade ourselves before our own minors of vanity, until we come to see how vulgarly we are acting and become ashamed of ourselves. At any rate, I seemed to have a clear track ahead of me. There was plenty of coal in the bunker. There was water in the tank. My hand was on the throttle. I opened it wide and sped along at a rapid pace. Alas, fate awaited me just around the corner, with a stuffed club that was not stuffed with cotton. Of course, I did not see the impending crash until it came. Mine was a sad story, but not unlike that which many another might tell if he would be frank with himself. Like a stroke of lightning out of a clear sky, the 1907 panic swept down upon me, and, overnight, it rendered me an enduring service by destroying my business and relieving me of every dollar that I possessed. This was my first serious defeat. I mistook it then for failure, but it was not, and before I complete this lesson, I will tell you why it was not. Third turning point. It required the 1907 panic and the defeat that it brought me to divert and redirect my efforts from the lumber business to the study of law. Nothing on earth except defeat could have brought about this result. Thus, the third turning point of my life was ushered in on the wings of that which most people would call failure, which reminds me to state again that every defeat teaches a needed lesson to those who are ready and willing to be taught. One of the greatest leaders who ever lived stated the secret of his leadership in 6 words as follows: kindness is more powerful than compulsion. R.L. 10. When I entered law school, it was with the firm belief that I would emerge doubly prepared to catch up with the end of the rainbow and claim my pot of gold. For I still had no other conception of success except that of money and power. I attended law school at night and worked as an automobile salesman during the day. My sales experience in the lumber business was turned to good advantage. I prospered rapidly, doing so well, still featuring the habit of performing more service and better service than that for which I was paid, that the opportunity came to enter the automobile manufacturing business. I saw the need for trained automobile mechanics. Therefore, I opened an educational department in the manufacturing plant and began to train ordinary machinists in automobile assembling and repair work. The school prospered, paying me over $1,000 a month in net profits. Again, I was beginning to near the end of the rainbow. Again, I knew I had at last found my niche in the world's work, that nothing could swerve me from my course or divert my attention from the automobile business. My banker knew that I was prospering, therefore he loaned me money with which to expand. A peculiar trait of bankers, a trait which may be more or less developed in the remainder of us also, is that they will loan us money without any hesitation when we are prosperous. My banker loaned me money until I was hopelessly in his debt. Then he took over my business as calmly as if it had belonged to him, which it did. From the station of a man of affairs who enjoyed an income of more than $1,000 a month, I was suddenly reduced to poverty. Now, 20 years later, I thank the hand of fate for this forced change. But at that time, I looked upon the change as nothing but failure. The rainbow's end had disappeared, and with it, the proverbial pot of gold, which is supposed to be found at its end. It was many years afterwards that I learned the truth, that this temporary defeat was probably the greatest single blessing that ever came my way, because it forced me out of a business that in no way helped me to develop knowledge of self or of others, and directed my efforts into a channel which brought me a rich experience of which I was in need. For the first time in life, I began to ask myself if it were not possible for one to find something of value other than money and power at the rainbow's end. This temporary questioning attitude did not amount to open rebellion, mind you, nor did I follow it far enough to get the answer. It merely came as a fleeting thought, as do so many other thoughts to which we pay no attention, and passed out of my mind. Had I known as much then as I now know about the law of compensation, and had I been able to interpret experiences as I can now interpret them, I would have recognized that event as a gentle nudge from the hand of fate. After putting up the hardest fight of my life, up to that time, I accepted my temporary defeat as failure, and thus was ushered in my next and fourth turning point, which gave me an opportunity to put into use the knowledge of law that I had acquired. 12. Fourth turning point. Because I was my wife's husband and her people had influence, I secured the appointment as assistant to the chief counsel for one of the largest coal companies in the world. My salary was greatly out of proportion to those usually paid to beginners, and still further out of proportion to what I was worth. But pull was pull, and I was there just the same. It happened that what I lacked in legal skill, I more than made up through the application of the principle of performing more service than that for which I was paid, and by taking the initiative and doing that which should have been done without being told to do it. I was holding my position without difficulty. I practically had a soft berth for life had I cared to keep it. Without consultation with my friends, and without warning, I resigned. This was the first turning point that was of my own selection. It was not forced upon me. I saw the old man fate coming and beat him to the door. When pressed for a reason for resigning, I gave what seemed to me to be a very sound one, but I bad trouble convincing the family circle that I had acted wisely. I quit that position because the work was too easy and I was performing it with too little effort. I saw myself drifting into the habit of inertia. I felt myself becoming accustomed to taking life easily, and I knew that the next step would be retrogression. I bade so many friends at court that there was no particular impelling urge that made it necessary for me to keep moving. I was among friends and relatives, and I had a position that I could keep as long as I wished it, 13, without exerting myself. I received an income that provided me with all the necessities and some of the luxuries, including a motor car and enough gasoline to keep it running. What more did I need? Nothing, I was beginning to say to myself. This was the attitude toward which I felt myself slipping. It was an attitude which, for some reason that is still unknown to me, startled me so sharply that I made what many believed to be an irrational move by resigning. However ignorant I might have been in other matters at the time, I have felt thankful ever since for having had sense enough to realize that strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle, that disuse brings atrophy and decay. This move proved to be the next most important turning point of my life, although it was followed by 10 years of effort, which brought almost every conceivable grief that the human heart can experience. I quit my job in the legal field, where I was getting along well, living among friends and relatives, where I had what they believed to be an unusually bright and promising future ahead of me. I am frank to admit that it has been an ever-increasing source of wonderment to me as to why and how I gathered the courage to make the move that I did. As far as I am able to interpret the event, I arrived at my decision to resign more because of a hunch, or a sort of prompting, which I then did not understand, than by logical reasoning. I selected Chicago as my new field of endeavor. I did this because I believed Chicago to be a place 14, where one might find out if one had those sterner qualities which are so essential for survival in a world of keen competition. I made up my mind that if I could gain recognition in any honorable sort of work in Chicago, It would prove that I had the sort of material in my makeup that might be developed into real ability. That was a queer process of reasoning. At least, it was an unusual process for me to indulge in at that time, which reminds me to state that we human beings often take unto ourselves credit for intelligence to which we are not entitled. I fear we too often assume credit for wisdom and for results that accrue from causes over which we have absolutely no control. While I do not mean to convey the impression that I believe all of our acts to be controlled by causes beyond our power to direct, yet I strongly urge you to study and correctly interpret those causes which mark the most vital turning points of your life, the points at which your efforts are diverted from the old into new channels, in spite of all that you can do. At least refrain from accepting any defeat as failure until you shall have had time to analyze the final result. My first position in Chicago was that of advertising manager of a large correspondence school. I knew but little about advertising, but my previous experience as a salesman, plus the advantage gained by rendering more service than that for which I was paid, enabled me to make an unusual showing. The first year I earned $5,200. I was coming back by leaps and bounds. Gradually, the rainbow's end began to circle around me, and I saw once more the shining pot of gold. Remember this when things go against you, that of all the expressions you carry in your face, the light of joy shines farthest out to sea. 16. Almost within my reach. History is full of evidence that a feast usually precedes a famine. I was enjoying a feast, but did not anticipate the famine that was to follow. I was getting along so well that I thoroughly approved of myself. Self-approval is a dangerous state of mind. This is a great truth which many people do not learn until the softening hand of time has rested upon their shoulders for the better part of a lifetime. Some never do learn it, and those who do are those who finally begin to understand the dumb language of defeat. I am convinced that one has but few, if any, more dangerous enemies to combat than that of self-approval. Personally, I fear it more than defeat. This brings me to my fifth turning point, which was also of my own choice. Fifth turning point. I had made such a good record as advertising manager of the correspondence school that the president of the school induced me to resign my position and go into the candy manufacturing business with him. We organized the Betsy Ross Candy Company, and I became its first president, thus beginning the next most important turning point of my life. The business grew rapidly until we had a chain of stores in 18 different cities. Again, I saw my rainbow's end almost within my reach. I knew that I had at last found the business in which I wished to remain for life. The candy business was profitable, and because I looked upon money as being the only 17 evidence of success, I naturally believed I was about to corner success. Everything went smoothly until my business associate and a third man, whom we had taken into the business, took a notion to gain control of my interest in the business without paying for it. Their plan was successful, in a way, but I balked more stiffly than they had anticipated I would. Therefore, for the purpose of gentle persuasion, they had me arrested on a false charge, and then offered to withdraw the charge on condition that I turn over to them my interest in the business. I had commenced to learn, for the first time, that there was much cruelty and injustice and dishonesty in the hearts of men. When the time for a preliminary hearing came, the complaining witnesses were nowhere to be found. But I had them brought and forced them to go on the witness stand and tell their stories, which resulted in my vindication and a damage suit against the perpetrators of the injustice. This incident brought about an irreparable breach between my business associates and myself, which finally cost me my interest in the business. But that was but slight when compared to that which it cost my associates, for they are still paying, and no doubt will continue to pay as long as they live. My damage suit was brought under what is known as a tort action, through which damages were claimed for malicious damage to character. In Illinois, where the action was brought, judgment under a tort action gives the one in favor of whom the judgment is rendered the right to have the person against whom it 18 whom it is obtained placed in jail until the amount of the judgment has been paid. In due time, I got a heavy judgment against my former business associates. could then have had both of them placed behind the bars. For the first time in my life, I was brought face to face with the opportunity to strike back at my enemies in a manner that would hurt. I had in my possession a weapon with teeth in it, a weapon placed there by the enemies themselves. The feeling that swept over me was a queer one. Would I have my enemies jailed, or would I take advantage of this opportunity to extend them mercy, thereby proving myself to be made of a different type of material? Then and there was laid in my heart the foundation upon which the 16th lesson of this course is built. For I made up my mind to permit my enemies to go free as they could be made by my having extended them mercy and forgiveness. But long before my decision had been reached, the hand of fate had commenced to deal roughly with these misguided fellow men who had tried in vain to destroy me. Time, the master worker, to which we must all submit sooner or later, had already been at work on my former business associates, and it had dealt with them less mercifully than I had done. One of them was later sentenced to a long term in the penitentiary for another crime that he had committed against some other person, and the other one had, meanwhile, been reduced to pauperism. We can circumvent the laws which men place upon statute books, but the law of compensation never. 19. The judgment which I obtained against these men stands on the records of the Superior Court of Chicago as silent evidence of vindication of my character, but it serves me in a more important way than that. It serves as a reminder that I could forgive enemies who had tried to destroy me, and for this reason, instead of destroying my character, I suspect that the incident served to strengthen it. Being arrested seemed, at the time, a terrible disgrace, even though the charge was false. I did not relish the experience, and I would not wish to go through a similar experience again, but I am bound to admit that it was worth all the grief it cost me, because it gave me the opportunity to find out that revenge was not a part of my makeup. Here I would direct your attention to a close analysis of the events described in this lesson, for if you observe carefully, you can see how this entire course of study has been evolved out of these experiences. Each temporary defeat left its mark upon my heart and provided some part of the material of which this course has been built. We would cease to fear or to run away from trying experiences if we observed, from the biographies of men of destiny, that nearly every one of them was sorely tried and run through the mill of merciless experience before he arrived. This leads me to wonder if the band of fate does not test the metal of which we are made in various and sundry ways before placing great responsibilities upon our shoulders. Before approaching the next turning point of my life, may I not call your attention to the significant fact that each turning point carried me nearer and 20 nearer my rainbow's end, and brought me some useful knowledge which became, later, a permanent part of my philosophy of life. Sixth turning point. We come now to the turning point which probably brought me nearer the rainbow's end than any of the others had, because it placed me in a position where I found it necessary to bring into use all the knowledge I had acquired up to that time, concerning practically every subject with which I was acquainted, and gave me opportunity for self-expression and development, such as rarely comes to a man so early in life. This turning point came shortly after my dreams of success in the candy business had been shattered, when I turned my efforts to teaching advertising and salesmanship as a department of one of the colleges of the Middle West. Some wise philosopher has said that we never learn very much about a given subject until we commence teaching it to others. My first experience as a teacher proved this to be true. My school prospered from the very beginning. I had a resident class and also a correspondence school, through which I was teaching students in nearly every English-speaking country. Despite the ravages of war, the school was growing rapidly, and I again saw the end of the rainbow within sight. Then came the second military draft, which practically destroyed my school, as it caught most of those who were enrolled as students. At one stroke, I charged off more than $75,000 in tuition fees, and 21 IT is far at the same time contributed my own service to my country. Once more, I was penniless. Unfortunate is the person who has never had the thrill of being penniless at one time or another, for as Edward Bach has truthfully stated, Poverty is the richest experience that can come to a man, an experience which, however, he advises one to get away from as quickly as possible. Again, I was forced to redirect my efforts, but before I proceed to describe the next and last important turning point, I wish to call your attention to the fact that no single event described up to this point is, within itself, of any practical significance. The 6 turning points that I have briefly described meant nothing to me, taken singly, and they will mean nothing to you if analyzed singly. But take these events collectively, and they form a very significant foundation for the next turning point, and constitute reliable evidence that we human beings are constantly undergoing evolutionary changes as a result of the experiences of life with which we meet, even though no single experience may seem to convey a definite, usable lesson. I feel impelled to dwell at length on the point which I am here trying to make clear, because I have now reached the point in my career at which men go down in permanent defeat or rise, with renewed energies, to heights of attainment of stupendous proportions, according to the manner in which they interpret their past experiences and use those experiences as the basis of working plans. If my story stopped here, it would be of no value to you. But there 23 is another and a more significant chapter yet to be written, covering the 7th and most important of all the turning points of my life. It must have been obvious to you, all through my description of the 6 turning points already outlined, that I had not really found my place in the world. It must have been obvious to you that most, if not all, of my temporary defeats were due mainly to the fact that I had not yet discovered the work into which I could throw my heart and soul. Finding the work for which one is best fitted and which one likes best is very much like finding the one person whom one loves best. There is no rule by which to make the search, but when the right niche is contacted, one immediately recognizes it. 7th turning point. Before I finish, I will describe the collective lessons that I learned from each of the 7 turning points of my life. But first, let me describe the 7th and last of these turning points. To do so, I must go back to that eventful day, November 11, 1918. That was Armistice Day, as everyone knows. The war bad left me without a penny, as I have already stated, but I was happy to know that the slaughter had ceased and reason was about to reclaim civilization once more. As I stood in front of my office window and looked out at the howling mob that was celebrating the end of the war, my mind went back into my yesterdays, especially to that eventful day when that 24 kind old gentleman laid his band on my shoulder and told me that if I would acquire an education, I could make my mark in the world. I had been acquiring that education without knowing it. Over a period of more than 20 years, I had been going to school in the University of Hard Knocks, as you must have observed from my description of the various turning points of my life. As I stood in front of that window, my entire past, with its bitter and its sweet, its ups and its downs, passed before me in review. The time had come for another turning point. I sat down to my typewriter, and to my astonishment, my hands began to play a regular tune upon the keyboard. I had never written so rapidly or so easily before. I did not plan or think about that which I was writing, just wrote that which came into my mind. Unconsciously, I was laying the foundation for the most important turning point of my life. For, when I had finished, I had prepared a document through which I financed a national magazine that gave me contact with people throughout the English-speaking world. So greatly did that document influence my own career and the lives of tens of thousands of other people that I believe it will be of interest to the students of this course. Therefore, I am reproducing it just as it appeared in Hill's Golden Rule magazine, where it was first published, as follows: a personal visit with your editor. I am writing on Monday, November 11th, 1918. Today will go down in history as the greatest holiday. On the street, just outside of my office window, 25, the surging crowds of people are celebrating the downfall of an influence that has menaced civilization for the past 4 years. The war is over. Soon our boys will be coming back home from the battlefields of France. The lord and master of brute force is nothing but a shadowy ghost of the past. 2,000 years ago, the Son of Man was an outcast, with no place of abode. Now the situation has been reversed, and the devil has no place to lay his head. let each of us take unto himself the great lesson that this world war has taught. Namely, only that which is based upon justice and mercy toward all, the weak and the strong, the rich and the poor alike can survive. All else must pass on. Out of this war will come a new idealism, an idealism that will be based upon the golden rule philosophy, an idealism that will guide us not to see how much we can do our fellow man for, but how much we can do for him that will ameliorate his hardships and make him happier as he tarries by the wayside of life. Emerson embodied this idealism in his great essay, The Law of Compensation. Another great philosopher embodied it in these words, "Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." The time for practicing the golden rule philosophy is upon us. In business as well as in social relationships, he who neglects or refuses to use this philosophy as the basis of his dealings will but hasten the time of his failure.